Boy, you think you're happy. Look at your parents. They're no longer paying the bills. Um, so thank you for the opportunity to address you on your graduation from this esteemed engineering school. I'm honored to help you celebrate this important milestone. Now, your life is already full of milestones. Your first steps, your first kiss, passing a driving test, and this graduation. And there are more to come. Your first job, getting married, buying a house, having a child, becoming a manager, starting a company, retirement, and eventually commencement speaker. In 33% of the commencement speeches this year, 2.8 million graduates are going to hear advice about follow your own path, learn from others, or the perennial favorite, you can make a difference. All this is great advice. And in fact, it's such great advice, I'm going to give you the exact same advice. But in very few of these speeches does anyone let you in on why we're telling you this with such passion and such urgency. So today, as we celebrate your graduation, I'm actually going to tell you why. So when I was young, I learned a quote in Sunday school that stayed with me throughout my entire life. It said, "Teach us to number our days that we gain a heart of wisdom." Since then, I've had a series of interesting careers. Technician in the Air Force, tech writer, marketeer, entrepreneur, CEO, and now educator and mentor. But this idea has never been far from my mind, that most of us will wake up 28,762 days, and then one day, we won't. That means for you, all of you, you have about 21,000 days left, and about 14,000 of them for your career. So herein lies the urgency. In every startup I did, every new course I created, and everything I taught, the phrase "make every day count" took on new meaning when I knew how many were left. So how do you live a life making the most of each day? That's the challenge we all face, and we all make different choices on how we do it. But this morning, I'd like to share 3 short stories about how I made my days count and gained some wisdom from others. So my first story is about taking risks and pushing boundaries. As you enter the working world, you're all going to hear things like, "That's not how we do things here," or "It's never been done this way before," or "The rules say you can't do this." Now, some of these rules will keep you from killing yourself on the job. They're pretty good ones. Pay attention to those. Some are required for you to gain the skills to perform your job. But here's the big idea. Most everything else people will tell you about rules is wrong. Not kind of wrong, but spectacularly wrong. It's ironic because ignoring the rules is what drives innovation and invention. And while most visionaries turn out to be hallucinating, the few who are right are the ones who push the human race further along. Let me give you an example. When I retired after 21 years working in 8 startups, I was invited to be a guest lecturer at the business school at the University of California in Berkeley. Now, they thought I could tell good stories about what it was like to start a company. But soon I began to pester the head of the department about this new idea I had, that startups are not smaller versions of large companies, that startups are actually different, that it was established businesses that execute business models, but startups actually search for them. Yet everyone, when I started talking about this, investors, entrepreneurs, academics, expected new startups to follow the same practices that work for large companies. Large companies write business plans, you write a business plan. Large companies forecast 5-year sales, we want you to do that too. And then, by the way, as you're doing all that, just build the product and then ship it, all without ever talking to customers. Back then, I was the lone voice inside of one of the country's leading business schools, challenging the conventional wisdom of the last 40 years, proposing that everything we were teaching about starting companies was wrong. Everything. I can't tell you the number of very smart professors and venture capitalists who just simply laughed in my face. But I didn't give up, because I knew the clock was running and I was determined to make every day I had count. I saw something they didn't, and to their credit, Berkeley's Business School and then Stanford's Engineering School let me write and teach a new course based on my ideas. 5 years later, the US National Science Foundation adopted this class, now called the Innovation Core, as the basis of commercializing science in the United States. This unorthodox idea has become a movement called the Lean Startup, and has led to entirely new ways to start companies, commercialize science, and think about innovation. So how does this happen? Innovation comes from those who see things that others don't. It comes from people who not only question the status quo, but keep persisting in face of all the naysayers, because your time here is limited. My second story is about mentors and gaining this heart of wisdom. So questioning dogma doesn't mean rejecting all advice and guidance from others who've come before you. In fact, your career and life can take on a very different trajectory if you find mentors and use that time to learn from their experience. As an entrepreneur in my 20s and 30s, I was lucky to have two very extraordinary mentors, each brilliant in his own field. One, Ben Wegbright, taught me how to think. I remember when Ben reviewed my first data sheet and returned it with entire paragraphs circled in red, labeled CFP. I asked around, and no one quite knew what CFP meant, so I got up enough nerve to finally ask Ben, and he said, it means content-free paragraph. So while Ben taught me to think, Gordon Bell taught me what to think about. Gordon had this uncanny ability to see the future trajectory of computer and chip technology way before I even understood the problem. Now, here's the big idea. I had no idea I was being mentored. I never asked for it, but I actually did seek out these people because I wanted to know what they knew. In hindsight, I realized what made these brilliant engineers put up with me was I was giving as good as I was getting. While I was learning from them and their years of experience and expertise, what I was giving back was equally important. I was bringing fresh insights and new perspectives to their thinking. In hindsight, I now realize mentorship is a two-way street. Now, finding a mentor can change your life, and this is where you gain that heart of wisdom. So if someone takes an interest in your work and your career, be open to their advice and think about what you could bring to the relationship. Teach us to number our days that we gain a heart of wisdom. My last story is about serendipity and making the days count. Some of you may already think you have a clear sense where your career is heading. Others of you probably have no idea. But either way, while your days count down, none of you should be worrying about what you will be doing 10 to 20 years from now, because none of it will happen as you expect. While your education has prepared you to master the facts, the other half of your brain needs to learn to trust in serendipity. By the way, the engineering definition of serendipity is that life is too unpredictable to pre-compute it. Serendipity is when it all comes together and you put all the days of your life into what becomes that heart of wisdom. Here's the latest way that serendipity has affected my life. Over the last decade, I've watched the lean startup approach to entrepreneurship take off. The National Science Foundation adopted it. The Lean Launchpad class is now taught around the world. And VCs, venture capitalists, now expect entrepreneurs to talk not just about their technology, but their customer development findings. It was amazing to see the movement I started grow and thrive. But just recently, serendipity sent me down a new road that connected data from 40 years ago till today. When I was 18, I served in the Air Force during the Vietnam War. After hanging up my uniform, I had little interaction with the military until now, 4 decades later, a group in the Department of Defense invited me to give a talk about lean methods. And shortly after that, I met Colonel Pete Newell, the retired head of the Army's Rapid Equipping Force, one of the best lean and agile organizations in the military. And I met Joel Felter, an ex-Special Forces colonel. As I spent time with Pete and Joe in the Department of Defense, two things struck me. One, the US government is still operating like a 20th century organization, while our adversaries are operating at 21st century speed. And two, solving this problem requires new ways to think about how to organize, how to build, and how to deploy national security solutions. So serendipity had just brought together my military experience of 40 years ago, the tools and technologies I spent the last decade building for lean startups. And so I stood back and asked, what if we could teach students how to use lean methods to solve the most challenging national security problems? And a new class, Hacking for Defense, was born. Together with Pete and Joe, and support from many others, we just taught this class for the first time, and hopefully will soon teach it here. We plan to scale the class across the country and create a new opportunity for students to engage in national service, solving problems to keep Americans safe at home and abroad. How did this happen? Showing up a lot and being open to new, seemingly unconnected experiences helped me create something that never existed before. For me, knowing I was counting the days made me to choose to work on things that pushed the boundaries and made us all collectively smarter. So what do these stories mean to you? 1, take risks and push boundaries. 2, learn from wise people who may know more than you do. And 3, let serendipity happen. Of course, only you can decide what you're going to do with those 14,000 days in your career. But as engineers trained here at NYU, you have a distinct advantage. As graduates, you've been given the tools to design and build things, to help people build better lives, and you could solve major challenges the world faces, and you could create something that never existed before. So congratulations, class of 2016. My challenge to you is make every day mean something. Teach us to number our days that we gain a heart of wisdom. Make all the days of your life matter. Thank you very much.